It's the return of Gonzo's Pinball Flipperama top 50 pinball machines, back by popular demands. If I'm honest, 2 of you have asked during the past 6 months. But hey, don't worry about that. We're going to do it anyway. Today we are going to feature Ghostbusters. What I'll be doing at the end of this video, I'll be asking you guys what you want to see next. But you can't just pick any old game because there's some rules to this top 50. This is my top 50. This is not the Pinside top 50. So these have my own sort of set of parameters. You've all probably left a review on Pinside in the past. I'm not going to spend ages labouring the point. I covered it all in the first episode on this series. But what happens is you rate your pinball machine on Pinside for things like artwork, audio quality, audio variation, backglass artwork, gameplay, game rules, longevity, lighting, music, and it puts it all into the supercomputer, mashes it up, and it gives you an average score. You might rate a game and it will come out and say your average score for this game is 8.2 out of 10. I like the Pinside Top 100, by the way. I've spent a long time poring over it, and I've got to be honest, it feeds into my decision making when I'm about to buy a game. However, I've decided to do my own top 50, and there's lots of criteria for me judging them and rating them, but in order for them to qualify, they have to have lived in this house. Either I've bought it or it's been loaned to me. The reason for doing it is I get a good opportunity to play the game, play a number of games on it, learn the rules, and get an overview of a game that you just can't get if you go and put some coins into a pinball machine on location and play 2 or 3 games. What I am judging the pinball machines on are, I've got to read my own list, so excuse me, I'm not being rude, I'm not looking at you, I'm looking at my list here. Fun. Is it addictive? Is it humorous? Does the machine have charm, personality, charisma? Toys and mechanisms. Is the game approachable for a newbie? That's important to me because a lot of people come round who aren't necessarily pinball players. And I think it's quite important. If you've got people round, to decide what you're going to do, how are you going to entertain yourself, what leisure activity you're going to do for the evening. I want people to play pinball because I love playing pinball. So it's good to have machines in here that appeal to people who are not necessarily into the hobby. The shots, the positions of the shots. What are the rules like? Are they easy to understand? So when I say rules, I don't mean how complex the rules are. I mean, how easy are these things to understand? Does it have achievable goals? Is the game rewarding or frustrating? And the final thing that I will factor into my thinking, which will decide where it rests on that there league table, do I regret it leaving? Did I miss it after it left? Now, you'll have to excuse me a little bit with Ghostbusters. It's been a little while since it's been here, as will be the case with a few of the machines. I've actually made some notes. I thought it was probably the fairest way to do it. I've gone and looked back at some of my archive footage of the game as well, just to refresh my memory. But what I always think is important on these reviews is to get a second opinion, even though its final standing will be based on what I think. Just in case you are watching one of these videos and pondering whether to go for one game over another, and you're going to look at this as a sort of resource for helping you decide, I think it's important to get a second opinion. So in this, there'll be regular contributors to the channel. It's Craig Pullen. So I'm going to play a little audio file. I messaged Craig and said, can you send me a WhatsApp message, please, and talk to me for a couple of minutes about Ghostbusters, which he's done. So you will get a second opinion. And he sent me the message so long ago, I can't even remember what he's actually said. Now, Ghostbusters is a game that has come in for a lot of criticism. Before I was lucky enough to have a Ghostbusters here, and I must thank my friend John for loaning it to me to enable me to do this video, I'd heard it criticised quite a lot. I'd heard mostly bad things said about Ghostbusters. So I have to say, we always talk on this channel about expectation levels. I was expecting it to be awful, and it surpassed my expectations. I thought what Ghostbusters in was a packed, fun game, which was, as I said, far better than I thought it would be. What I'm going to do now is just read through some of my thoughts on the game, but also let's just have a little look on how it tallies up with my criteria for the top 50. So first of all, is Ghostbusters fun? Yes, Ghostbusters is an incredibly fun game. It absolutely is. I think that's possibly its best characteristic. Is it addictive? I think it can be. I think sometimes the frustration, because it can be quite a brutal game, can sort of impact that addictive phase on it, but there are some really addictive things. There's a loop shot up the top ramp. Now, I was lent the premium model, and there's a top ramp on the left-hand side which goes down to a subway system. And there's certainly rewards for looping that and hitting that consistently during the game. That is a very addictive shot, so I like that. Does it have charm and does it have personality and charisma? Has bundles of it. It is packed full of them. There are some games that we've said on here and mentioned before that might be quite soulless. This isn't one of them. I think it's really important to mention with Ghostbusters that Ghostbusters was the last game of the DMD era that Stern created. So Ghostbusters was the last game that didn't have an LCD screen, basically. The toys and mechanisms, well, I can only speak for the premium because that's all I've had. Loads of them. In fact, you look at the price that Ghostbusters was, even the premium, and the price of Stern machines now, it's embarrassing how few mechanisms and toys the modern games have in them compared to something like Ghostbusters. Just thinking it's got the subway there, Slimer, the Ecto goggles, lots of magnets going around, and there's a lot of stuff going on. It really is an extremely packed game, and you cannot fault it for that at all. If you were to walk up and look at a Ghostbusters game, it looks appealing, it looks appetizing, it looks like a toy store under glass. So, I mean, the kids loved it. The kids absolutely loved Ghostbusters. It lures you in, it makes you want to play it. It doesn't look barren, it doesn't look empty. You're not... There's a cityscape in it. So I think it's the town hall, and there's lots of buildings and things like that in it. They're sculpted. It's 3D. You haven't got flat pieces of plastic, which obviously Stern seem to churn out quite a lot of that stuff now. I really like it. I think it's a very attractive game. So it's very approachable, actually. The shots and the positions, they vary. It has to be said. I think some of the shots are good. I think there's lots of really good use of the captive ball in it. There's a couple of scoops. There's a loop shot which loops through the back under the Ecto goggles, loops round. That's a really good shot. There's a good flow to that shot. The big ramp on the left-hand side is achievable. It's steep, but not too steep. I think that's really good. That's a good shot. But then again, there are some other shots. There's some geometry issues with the game. There really are. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. It can be a brutal game. It can be a very frustrating game, actually. There's a ramp on the right-hand side. It's very tight. Very tight. There's not much flow to it. There's not a great deal of flow in this game. So I think in terms of the shots, this game is a mixed bag. The rules. What I will say for this game is the rules may or may not be complex on it, but in many respects it doesn't matter, because I do think there's perfect use of the DMD and the inserts. They are big inserts on it. The playfield itself leaves you it leaves you no guesswork into where the next shot should be. It's very well lit. The screen is telling you. You only have to glance up, but the playfield is so well populated with inserts, and they are big. I think that's always been a key thing for me. Attack from Mars, I find that's one of the great things about Attack from Mars. The inserts are big. You're never scratching around thinking, which city have I destroyed? How many more shots have I got to make to get the multi-ball or to get the blaster or whatever it is? It's all very clear. I find this is exactly the same. You're collecting ghosts as you go through it as well. It's very clear how many you've got, how many you've got to go, and what shot should be hit next. So there are some relatively complex rules on it. Nothing compared to a sort of like a Keith Elwing game, like an Avengers Infinity Quest or something like that. Nothing that sort of depth. But even if you don't know the rules, I always think that the playfield is a paint-by-numbers way to guide you around the game. And I think it does a really, really good job of doing that. Are there achievable goals? Absolutely. Absolutely, there are achievable goals. I think that the issue is you can sometimes get so... there can be some frustrating things in the game which will stop you and thwart you from achieving those goals. But certainly. Rewarding, frustrating, well, both. It can be both. There's some that loop shot is extremely rewarding. It feels good. I sometimes say when I'm approaching a pinball machine or I'm playing a pinball machine, I'll often say the shots are where they're meant to be, or the shots are not where they're meant to be. And that's only personal to me. It just means I find some games easier to hit. It just feels like the ramp's in the right position, and whereas some you play and you feel like the shots are between the margins. Some games might feel more clunky towards some people than others. So I certainly find that ramp is exactly where it is meant to be. I can hit that over and over, and the same with that orbit shot under the Ecto goggles. That's a very achievable shot, very makeable shot for me. But then again, the ramp on the right I find extremely difficult, and I find it slows the game up as well. It can be frustrating with the double in lanes and the metal bar on it, which I think you can sometimes almost, when you try and nudge it to save it, you can bounce yourself into trouble, and sometimes it can look like the ball is going to be safe and it sort of trickles out into the out lane, so that's frustrating. Now, it has some features on it, and particularly I think it's the Premium, and I don't even know if they were doing a limited edition when they were doing this, but whatever. Certainly the Premium has magnets in between the flippers, just above them, in between the slingshots, above the flippers. And a lot of people seem to get annoyed with that. I didn't mind it. It sort of grabs the ball and starts chucking it around. Didn't have a massive problem with it, because I sort of get it. It goes with the theme. It's that the ball's haunted, right? It's a ghost grabbing your ball, and that I think no problem with that. I thought it was quite interesting, so I don't find that frustrating. Particularly, the most frustrating thing I found about the game are the pop-up targets that pop up out the playfield, called the Scaleri brothers. I think they're unnecessary, and I think they're too frequent. I'm not a great lover of the implementation of them. One of the reasons I would prefer Attack from Mars over Medieval Madness. I prefer the aliens to the side of it, not popping up out the playfield. I prefer those to the trolls. That being said, those trolls are a lot more manageable in Medieval Madness than Scaleri brothers are. They are a nuisance. I don't like them. Whereas I think if you play something like Cactus Canyon, I think that adds to the game. When those pop-ups come out in the shootout, and particularly when there's the countdown, I think that really adds to the drama, but I don't feel that they're interrupting the gameplay. These Scaleri brothers interrupt the gameplay. They definitely interrupt the flow. And there were times I'd find it very, very frustrating. It'd make me not want to play the game again. So it could be equally rewarding and frustrating. The other thing to mention about Ghostbusters is that I think they come with the lightning flippers, which, if you don't know, they're slightly shorter flippers. The version I had, John had put on longer flippers, and I think it was absolutely the right thing to do. I'm not ashamed to do that, far from it. In fact, I actually prefer Fishtails. I find Fishtails a much better game with the longer flippers. It still doesn't become an incredibly long game, but I do prefer it. But that's just for me. And I do think if you're going to spend a lot of money on these games, then, you know, if that's going to make your enjoyment of it better, then do it. I think it's your money. You've spent the money on the game, and there shouldn't be anybody else telling you what you shouldn't do with your £5,000-6,000 that you might have spent on a game. You want longer flippers, you put longer flippers on there. So I never got the frustration with the flipper gap, which some people tend to have with this game. Do I regret it leaving? No. When we've put it up on the screen, which is, do I regret it leaving? That's also, do I miss it? Have I missed the game? No, I don't miss the game, truth be known. But there's not an awful lot of games that I have missed. I mean, I could count on one hand of all the games I've had through it that I miss, and think I wish I'd have still had that. Which this is a really good thing, because it allows me to develop in my mind what my perfect lineup would be. And at the moment, I've got a perfect lineup of 7 games, ranging from the very old to the very new, actually. But I don't regret Ghostbusters leaving, it has to be said. Right, before we get on to Craig and we just play Craig's bit of audio, I just want to go through a little pit stop for my glasses here. Just want to go through a few of my notes just in case I haven't missed anything. There are 2 scoops, which are really good. As I mentioned, there's great use of the captive balls. The ramp on the right I've mentioned. It is absolutely packed. The out lanes can be very, very brutal, and I've written that here because it will often look like it's going into the in lane or bounce into the out lane. But overall, I think it's a really good game. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to play you the audio from Craig to give you Craig's opinion on this game, although Craig won't be telling you where it ranks in the top 50, because it is absolutely, it's my personal taste, it is my top 50. After we've heard from Craig, we're going to take this magnetic label. We're going to take a walk over to the board there, and we are going to decide where this goes.
Stern Ghostbusters. So yeah, Stern Ghostbusters was a pinball machine made in 2016 by Stern. It's a game that really polarizes and divides opinion. I think when it was first released and pictures were first released of Ghostbusters, there was a huge amount of hype about it because I think it's a really good looking game. I think the art package on it is really, really good. It's super vibrant. It's really colourful. And it's Ghostbusters, you know, wonderful theme. And so there was a huge amount of excitement about it. And then the reception wasn't amazing after it was released. The game, the first code that came out wasn't amazing, and there's the huge flipper gap that is common on a lot of Trudeau games. So John Trudeau, the designer, also made like Creature from the Black Lagoon. Creature also has this like really wide flipper gap as well, and it takes a bit of getting used to, and especially for players who are perhaps just starting out, find that really, really tricky. For me personally, I really like the game. And especially on its latest code, you know, it's hard, isn't it, to base games on their early code. You know, I remember when Spider-Man first came out and it was pretty terrible because there was nothing in there. And that was pretty much the same for Ghostbusters. But upon completion, once the code update was made, I really like the game. If you play it through the levels, you know, so basically it's kind of like a mode-based game. You've got 3 different, or is it 4 different sections of the playfield that light up at the beginning, and you're choosing the different modes, and you're trying to progress to the mini wizard modes at the end, and obviously the final end game is to complete all of the modes, and that's really fun. Really, really fun. Some of the modes are excellent. You know, some of the shots are really tight and tricky, but I really enjoy all of that. Personally, for me, the Pro version of Ghostbusters is better than the Premium. I do not like the Magna Slings. I think they're terrible. Those Ecto goggles, you know, it's just a bit of a gimmick that I'm not really bothered about. So the Pro, you know, for me is a really, really great game, and I love that left ramp is a really satisfying shot. There is a flaw to the game, as I always like to mention. Shooting that left ramp over and over and over again builds the proton pack, which is the targets on the left-hand side, and then you collect them on the left-hand side, and basically that is a very, very, very repeatable shot. And then what you can do is you can just collect massive values on the proton pack on the left-hand side. So you will see, you know, if a Ghostbusters ever come up in competition, people going for that all the time rather than actually playing through the modes and playing through the game. But yeah, for me, Ghostbusters is a really, really good game. I understand it will divide opinion, and there are some flaws with it, but I think it's great.
Thank you very much indeed, Craig. Right, before I go over there and we decide where this is going to rank in the league table, I mentioned at the start of the video, you guys get to choose the next game that I put up on that board. Now, remember the rules. I have to have had the game in this house. There's no point saying Adam's Family. I've never had it in this house or whatever it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reel off a list of games that I have had, but I am reading them off the forum. I'm reading them off the Pinball Info forum, okay? So this is a list of my games that I've had. So don't forget, they're already on that list. We've got Attack from Mars, Elvira's House of Horrors, Avengers Infinity Quest, Medieval Madness, Judge Dredd, and Popeye. So if I read them out now, obviously we've already done those. It can almost leave the comments below on YouTube. Just type the comments below, and then you know I'll take it from there. But what I'll do is, I don't know how many people are going to comment, but if a game is mentioned twice or whatever, whichever has the most votes, so to speak, we'll do that on the next video, and I'll make sure I do it very, very soon. So I'm not going to include 8-Ball Deluxe because even though I've had it here, it's been Tombstone. We're doing a restoration with Ant on that one, so we won't include that for now. I can only really appraise it once I've spent a lot of time playing it. I've not played it a lot. So we have Foo Fighters, Sopranos, Deadpool, Godzilla, Roadshow, Batman 66, Monster Bash, Jurassic Park, the Keith Elwin one, we've done Elvira, Congo, Rush, Fishtails, Aerosmith, Cactus Canyon, that's the remake, Deadpool, I've said Deadpool, Alien, that's the Pinball Brothers one, Toy Story 4, Stranger Things, Star Trek Next Generation, The Walking Dead. You don't want to, you'll be anyway. Don't worry about that. Judge Dredd we've done. X-Men, Aerosmith I've mentioned. Sorry, some of these are doubled up. Medieval Madness we've done. Popeye we've done. Jackbot, Star Wars. That's the Steve Ritchie Star Wars. Star Trek, which is that's also Steve Ritchie, but that's the Stern Star Trek, obviously. Champion Pub, Iron Maiden, AC/DC, Munsters, Jurassic Park Home Edition, World Cup '94, and Dolly Parton. Now, I've been really lucky. I'm reading out that list, and it feels amazing that I've had that many games through this. If you've been counting on doing that, you're thinking, hold on, that's not 50. I'm pretty sure by the time I finish this, I'll have had 50 pinball machines through the house for a number of reasons. It's not just me buying them. Far from it. There's a number of really great people and good friends who have lent me pinball machines. Many of whom I mentioned on this channel over and over. And I'm often getting offered to loan pinball machines. By my friends and by the pinball community as a whole, and the pinball community in the UK are a great group, a really, really special group. And of course, our sponsors, Pinball Heaven, who, do more than anything they can to get us games down here to supply and review. So there'll be many more. Anyway, that's enough chit-chat. You want to know where that's going to be on the list, right? Okay, so now the moment of truth. Obviously, you can see the board up there. I think it's quite clear that Ghostbusters is not going to be troubling the very top. Attack from Mars is king of pinball machines, really. That's not to say it will finish top of my list, but I think it's king of pinball machines. Elvira, Avengers Infinity Quest, Medieval Madness. I've got to be honest with you, it's going to be down the bottom. But that doesn't mean to say it's going to stay down the bottom. I could already in my mind, out of that list of machines that I read out earlier, this is going to finish above quite a few of them. So it comes down to this: how much do I miss it? And then the final thing, whenever the placings are quite tight and there's not much between the machines, I ask myself, if I was going to have a machine loaned back to me, I had no pinball machines, and somebody was going to say to me, I'm going to loan you a pinball machine. Would you want Attack from Mars or Ghostbusters? Of course I'd take Attack from Mars. Would I want Medieval Madness or Ghostbusters lent to me? I would take Medieval Madness. However, if I was asked, would you like to borrow a Ghostbusters or a Judge Dredd, and it was my only pinball machine, I'd take the Judge Dredd. So, and I understand that might be an unpopular opinion, but that's just where it is. As I say, it is my list. I'd be interested to know what you think in the comments. So I'm just going to move these guys down a little bit here, make a bit of room on the board. Popeye moves down. Ghostbusters goes right in there. So now we have Attack from Mars, Elvira's House of Horrors, Avengers Infinity Quest, Medieval Madness, Judge Dredd, Ghostbusters, and Popeye. And I will also tell you something else now. Popeye will not be finished bottom of this list. There will be a few controversial decisions that I know. Popeye will finish above a couple of people's favourite games. I can tell you that much now. But I'm not doing it to be controversial. This is my honest opinion. Thank you to everybody that's been watching the channel. I've been really delighted with so many of your comments, particularly the way you're joining in and engaging. I'll be doing a few more of these in the upcoming few weeks before now and Pinfest, just to sort of boost this board up a little bit. Just before I leave, I would also say that this is subject to change. I may wake up one morning and just randomly think, do you know what? I prefer Medieval Madness to Avengers Infinity Quest, and that's my that's down to me. It's my game, my rules, if you know what I mean. But for the moment, there you have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's my top 7. Let me know in the comments below which machine you want me to do next.